Okay, this next little tidbit, this one's interesting. This is official early gameplay of a game that I believe it's just one guy. Either way, it's a very small team. And it is footage that went viral, and basically how it's described is that you work to solve a complex case using tactical and detective skills. It's a single-player FPS, and it tells the story of a tactical police officer from the perspective of his body cam. And this went viral because people thought that it looked so freaking realistic that they were sure this had to be fake. And honestly, it does look pretty good. Immediately what stands out to me is the micro movements of like the camera wiggling.
Shots fired.
The animation quality is crazy good. I do think that this would be like Nausea Simulator Supreme. Like, I'm ready to just pass out already, but it's crazy, dude. And I'm guessing how they did this. I don't know this for a fact. I'm guessing how they did this was with some of the recent like AI scan tools that allow you to scan real world environments and then import them into Unreal. And it just leads to like actual environments that are realistically brought into the game engine where you don't have to manually do it. I'll show you some clips of that in just a moment of that working. And it's going to really change indie game dev. But like, it looks very realistic, does it not? Yeah, the lighting won't be dynamic though. That's true. I think you can do some highlight stuff with flashlights like they're doing here. But like, it's only a matter of time before they allow you to bring that stuff in and they can analyze the textures. And as long as you're like importing it in daylight, well lit, they should, I think, be able to tweak it. So, yeah, and then the Call of Duty board game. That's a whole other thing. So that went viral. People were like, oh, dude, it's clearly fake. Somebody filmed this on an actual body cam, went in, and then is now like, dude, cringe. You just filmed on your phone or on a GoPro, and now you're pretending like it's a game. Cringe, dude. Well, they actually showed the timeline and like their project within Unreal Engine. Moving around, showing it running in real time to demonstrate that this is in fact actually running and it is a real thing. And again, for me, the thing that really stands out is the animation quality. There's some weird stuff that goes on with like the occasional reflection and some like lighting doesn't quite click together perfectly, but man, it looks very, very good. Then you see he shows it's running in real time. And like I said, what I think they did here is I think they went to an actual place and they actually scanned it in, and there's actually a couple of new tools that are able to do this. So Google developers used a small number of photos and AI to create 3D models of a home. And there's a handful of systems and softwares that can do this, but basically it's a system that allows you to go into a space, take a handful of pictures, and then they use 3D photogrammetry to scan it, piece it together, and create a 3D environment based on it that you could then theoretically just directly import into your game engine. Not just useful for games, also useful for historical preservation. You could go into old buildings before they're demolished and record exactly what they look like. Crime scene investigation. I mean, imagine having like a full 3D scan of a house like this. It'd be crazy. Yeah, all that footage of the body cam game is wild. It really brings up a lot of questions, I think, about the ethics of this stuff. I think it brings up questions of like, what are the implications of all of this? And Train actually, even though he's just a gambling streamer and that's kind of all he does, he actually had some interesting perspectives and things to say about it, because of course the footage is very, very realistic and pretty unsettling, especially when you think through like the possible implications of a game that's this realistic appearing. And what he said is, I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but this level of realism in video games should be heavily moderated in shooters, specifically, for anyone under a certain age. I hope parents do their job. This level of realism for shooting and killing makes me feel uncomfortable, as if I'm watching a real leak from a military or police operation. The clear distinction between real and fake is necessary, but this level of realism, in my opinion, gives real credibility to the nonsense politicians have been spewing for years about video games conditioning young people to lose sense of empathy towards violent tendencies or situations. And I think that this is interesting. Like, it's pretty clear that this is a very, very realistic looking game. And even in comparison to like other amazingly impressive games, graphically speaking, like The Last of Us Part 2 that have gore systems and stuff, it looks far, far more photorealistic. And the fact that it's framed as a body cam also makes it appear even more realistic, because it's, I mean, I'm just look at it. Like, it really does look like a live leak of a police operation. What politicians are referencing, and maybe if you're not from the US, maybe you're not familiar with it, but in the US, it's common for politicians to try and blame mass shootings or terrible crimes that are committed using guns by young people. They try to blame it on video games, saying that video games, Call of Duty, Battlefield, any of these other games, they are allowing kids to live fantasies and delusions of grandeur, to live out their violent tendencies. And that's bad. It's training and conditioning kids to do things that are terrible, and we should avoid that. I would say there's actually a good amount of evidence, as far as I'm aware, to suggest that giving people with violent tendencies an outlet to sort of role play their violent tendencies probably does more to prevent violent behavior than pretending as though those violent tendencies and behaviors don't exist. It actually seems to be the case that, since it's funny, the two things that have most contributed, according to a handful of researchers, to the reduction in violent crime in the last 30 years has been the advent of video games, which allows specifically young males to exert their violent aggression, not physically, but in the context of a video game, and also pornography, because they're able to take care of their pent-up urges, shall we say, at home, and not go out and do something violent, and so it's actually pretty clear that in the last 30 years, there's probably some correlation between video games and pornography distribution globally and accessibility being increased that's allowed for violent behavior to decrease as well. However, as for all of this, I do think that we're reaching a point very quickly with AI, especially with deep fakes and things, that starts to get a little unsettling, because you do start to wonder at what point people will fail to realize what's real and fake. But one thing I'm trying to bear in mind is that this is also something like people were even saying back in 2005, 2006, with like the PS3. People were seeing footage of some of those play tests and demos that they were doing and being like, we're starting to get really close. Oh man, like you remember the Dark Sorcerer. This was even like 2013. Okay, so this wasn't even like they had to advertise this is real time on PS4, and you're about to see it and go like, okay. The fire looks very video gamey. It doesn't look bad, but like it doesn't look photorealistic. Especially facial animations, his face and everything. This in no way would like blow anybody away today. But in 2013, people saw this and were like, "Oh my God, we're reaching the point where we might really have to worry about realistic deepfakes and things." So every generation, every time that they update, oh my God. Every time they update graphics and stuff, people have this discussion. I think AI is getting to the point where it actually is indistinguishable, but then again, people also were saying this kind of thing about this demo back in the day. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe it is just the case that right now it looks really realistic, and once we get our hands on it, we'll be like, well, actually, it's clearly a video game, and we can see some artifacting and stuff. I think part of the reason that the footage in this case with this shooter appears so realistic is because of the artifacting, the distortion and stuff, the video compression. And you see every time the camera moves, there's tons of motion blur, there's tons of artifacting. It makes it look real because it covers up a lot of the inconsistencies and the mistakes in the blur. And I think if you're playing this game, a lot of people would go to try to turn off the motion blur and stuff. And at that point, I think it would look a lot less realistic, because part of the reason it looks like a body cam is because body cam footage isn't always very high quality. And so you can cover up a lot of the clunk and a lot of the maybe texture pop in, a lot of the issues with that blurriness. But I mean, I think the thing that really makes this stand out is the animation quality. It's crazy how good all the little movements are. It's really, really impressive. He took my thing.